Jake Riley woke before sunrise, his entire body tensed with anticipation as he prepared for another day on set. Through the thin curtains of his small apartment, the early glow of morning light revealed the outlines of cluttered stunt gear, protective pads, harnesses, and thick-soled boots. His alarm hadn't yet rung, but the habit of beating it every day was ingrained into him. He had always prided himself on punctuality and discipline, traits he believed separated those who truly succeeded in his line of work from those who fell behind. He rose from bed, already feeling the slow ache in his calves and shoulders, remnants of yesterday's performance, a choreographed combat scene that had ended with him crashing shoulder first onto a padded mat. Even with high-quality mats and protective gear, no stunt was ever completely comfortable, and Jake's body showcased the evidence. Bruises the size of fists dotted his arms and ribs, while older discolorations had started to fade to pale yellows and greens. He stretched carefully, inhaling deeply to prepare himself for the day. The quiet of the morning was a sanctuary before the usual chaos of the film set. He was in his mid-20s, tall, broad-shouldered, with a lean build that masked surprising strength. A few faint scars near his temples told stories of minor injuries from older projects, reminders of the line of work he had chosen. In the kitchen, he turned on the coffee maker and waited for the machine to gurgle and sputter. Its aroma filled the small space, chasing away the last vestiges of sleep from his mind. While the coffee brewed, he stared at a small calendar tacked to the refrigerator. He had circled a date coming up in a couple of weeks, an all-or-nothing stunt scene that could be his biggest break so far. It was rumored to be a major highlight in the upcoming action film, one that might boost his career to new heights if done right. He heard a soft knock at his door, which was odd so early in the morning. But as soon as the faint echo of a second knock followed, he realized who it was. Maria, the film set medic he'd been dating, had likely dropped by for a quick hello before starting her own shift. She often visited unexpectedly, carrying an easy smile and a gentle presence. Jake switched off the coffee maker, made his way to the door, and opened it. "Good morning," Maria said, voice still soft with sleep. She was in her mid-20s as well, wearing casual scrubs under a light jacket. Her long dark hair was braided, and her eyes carried a warmth that made Jake's world feel a bit lighter. "Hey," Jake said, returning her smile. "You're here early." "I wanted to see you before we head off to shoot," she replied, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "I know you're probably all right, but after yesterday's fall, I just wanted to make sure." Jake let out a short laugh, though the sting in his side reminded him he wasn't quite as cavalier as he pretended. "I'm good. A little banged up, but that's the job." She reached up to touch the side of his cheek, looking him over like she would any patient. "I'm constantly worried about you," she murmured, studying the faint bruise that ran along his jawline. One day, the adrenaline of the job might not be enough. "Then it'll be time for a new career," Jake teased, though both of them knew it wasn't that simple. Stunt work was more than just a paycheck. For Jake, it was living on the edge in a way that made him feel truly alive. They spent the next few minutes together as Jake insisted on pouring her a cup of coffee. She leaned against the kitchen counter, patiently watching him work. When he glanced at her, he noticed the worry lines on her face had deepened slightly since they'd first met. He understood. Every day she witnessed injuries, big and small, from people who shared his profession. Sometimes they were so bad that she'd help rush them to the hospital. Her concern for him was unspoken, but ever present. "Let me guess," Jake said as he handed her a mug. "You want to make sure I'm using the analgesic cream you gave me?" She nodded, taking a careful sip of coffee. "And to see if maybe you'd try something else for the pain. Painkillers aren't a great long-term plan." Jake arched an eyebrow. "Trust me, if I could find a better way, I'd do it." They chatted a bit more before deciding to carpool to the film set. The drive was quiet and uneventful. Once they arrived, Maria went to check in with the medical crew, while Jake headed to the stunt coordination area. The day passed in a haze of minor stunts, tumbles, controlled falls, a bit of stage fighting, nothing too extreme. Still, by the time shooting wrapped, new aches had replaced the old ones, stacking on top of each other, leaving him feeling burdened by his own body. "Hey, man," called out a fellow stunt performer, Daniel, as they were packing up. Daniel was older and had seen dozens of stunts in his time. "You want to join a few of us for a quick bite?" Jake hesitated, thinking of the dull ache in his thighs and arms. He craved solitude and comfort more than socializing right now. "I'll pass. I think I'm just going to head home and call it a night." Daniel gave him a quick nod. "No problem. Rest up. Tomorrow's a bigger scene." Jake forced a grin he didn't feel. "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow." On the drive home, he found himself wincing at every red light, every bump in the road. Although he knew stunts were inherently punishing, today he was hyper-aware of his physical discomfort. A long soak in the bath sounded like paradise, and that was exactly what he did. The moment he locked his apartment door, he flung his bag onto the couch and headed to the bathroom. As the tub filled with steaming water, he carefully peeled off his layers: jacket, t-shirt, protective padding. Each movement reminded him of how battered he was. He sank into the bath and felt the water cradle his tired muscles. It helped, but only temporarily. By the time he stepped out, toweled off and changed into boxers, the aches had returned. He eyed the half-empty bottle of painkillers on the counter, but something in him resisted. He'd relied on them too often, and Maria's words echoed in his mind, telling him to find another method to ease the pain. He padded into the bedroom, rummaging through his drawers for something soft to wear. He found mostly plain t-shirts and old sweatpants, clothes that, while comfortable, still felt rough against his fresh bruises. In the corner stood Maria's small pile of clothes, left behind from the nights she stayed over. She had a few items folded neatly: a loose-fitting bamboo t-shirt, a pair of super soft yoga pants, and a comfortable hoodie. Jake paused, glancing at them as though they were contraband. He remembered once pulling at the sleeve of her bamboo t-shirt, joking about how absurdly soft it felt. She'd laughed and told him how she sought out breathable fabrics for her stressful schedule. He looked down at his arms, still dotted with bruises and scrapes. The desire to feel anything gentle against his skin overcame his hesitation. She was working late and wouldn't come by until tomorrow. The temptation was overwhelming. He picked up the bamboo t-shirt, hesitating for just a second before slipping it on. The moment the fabric touched his skin, he felt relief. It was unlike any of the rough cotton shirts he owned. Encouraged, he grabbed the yoga pants next, stepping into them slowly. He felt a sense of awkwardness at first. They were tight in places he wasn't used to, but they supported his aching muscles in a surprisingly comforting way. For a moment he stood there, examining himself in the mirror. He was tall, with short, slightly messy brown hair and a lean, muscular frame that the yoga pants accentuated in a peculiar way. The outfit was undeniably designed for a woman's figure, but the softness was exactly what he had been craving. He took a few tentative steps, running his palms across the fabric. A gentle contentment washed over him. No painkiller had ever felt like that. Like he was soothing his body from the outside, allowing it a moment of genuine relief. He couldn't help but laugh softly. This was far from any image he projected on set. The tough, masculine stunt performer who took hits and shrugged them off. Yet, alone in his apartment, it was impossible to deny how good it felt. He settled on the couch, turning on the TV to distract himself. The tightness around his legs from the yoga pants was oddly comforting. He rotated his shoulders, feeling the t-shirt glide against his bruised torso. This moment of rest felt almost luxurious after so many hours of strain. Eventually, his eyes grew heavy. He changed back into his boxers and carefully folded Maria's clothes the way he had found them, placing them on the chair in the bedroom. For the first time in weeks, he slept deeply, waking up the next morning with fewer aches than usual. He felt physically better, just enough to register that the night before had made a real difference. But a different weight now settled in his mind. He had worn Maria's clothes. They weren't designed for men like him. If he told anyone, especially on the film set, he imagined the teasing he would face. Yet the memory of that feeling clung to him. The idea of wearing something similar again wasn't distasteful. It was actually appealing. The next day was filled with more stunts, rolling takes that tested his endurance. Several times he found himself daydreaming about that soothing fabric while waiting for his turn to perform. Daniel and some of the others teased him gently about looking distant, but they chalked it up to normal fatigue. At one point, Maria came by to check on a small scrape on his elbow, and he felt a twinge of guilt. As she examined him, he tried to act natural, but the memory of using her clothes in secret made him uneasy. That night, though, the allure of comfort won out. When he got home, he went to the bedroom and pulled on her yoga pants again. He had never paid attention to what brand they were, but he silently thanked whoever designed them. Once more, relief spread through his tired muscles. He felt a soft tingle of guilt. He reasoned with himself that this was purely about physical comfort. He wasn't pursuing any wild thrill, nor was he trying to present himself in some theatrical way. He simply needed gentle, supportive clothes that let his bruised, battered body breathe. By the end of the week, it became a secret habit. He started washing Maria's clothes himself, just so she wouldn't notice any lingering odors or sweat. He was careful to refold them exactly as she left them, placing them back so she wouldn't suspect anything. There was a faint sense of paranoia each time he worried about leaving a sock or a stray thread out of place. Yet his concern was overshadowed by the tangible relief he gained each night from easing into the gentle fabrics. On set, he still performed with the same unwavering bravado. He joked with the other stunt performers about the pains of their trade. Maria occasionally shot him questioning glances because he seemed less worn out lately. She asked him if he was using the analgesic cream more often, or if he'd found a new regimen. He'd shrug non-committally, saying only that he was trying new things. One afternoon, as filming wrapped, the director informed them the schedule was about to intensify. A big stunt was scheduled for the upcoming weekend, one that would require the best performers. That night, in bed, Jake felt the familiar ache in every muscle. He realized how unprepared he might be without truly healing between takes. 2 days later, a more serious accident rattled the production. A fellow stuntman, Kevin, missed his footing during a complicated fall off a rig. Though he landed on mats, his side slammed into the edge of a platform before hitting the ground. Jake, who had been spotting from below, saw the impact and felt a stab of dread. Kevin was rushed to the set's medical area, where Maria and the other medics attended to him. When Jake found Maria afterward, she seemed shaken. "He's bruised badly around his ribs," she reported, "but no fractures, as far as we can tell. He just needs rest. Lots of it." Later, Kevin sat propped up against a bench, wincing with each breath. "They say I should stay overnight at a hospital, but..." He looked frustrated. "Insurance issues and everything else. I'm going to have to figure something out." Jake's concern deepened. "I have a couch," he offered, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "If you need a place to stay until you feel better, you're welcome. I live alone, so no one else to bother you." Kevin looked relieved, though he tried to mask it. "That'd be great, man. Thanks." In that instant, Jake realized the precarious situation he had just invited into his home. Up until now, His secret habit of wearing Maria's clothes existed solely in the privacy of his apartment. Now someone else, a colleague, would be staying over, a person who could easily misunderstand, tease him, or spread rumors. Jake felt a pang of anxiety, but he couldn't retract the offer without looking callous. At the end of the shoot, they packed their gear, and Jake helped Kevin into his car, driving carefully through the city until they reached Jake's building. Ascending the staircase to the apartment was slow going, with Kevin clutching his side. Once inside, Jake guided him to the couch, piling a few pillows behind his back. "You got anything for the pain?" Kevin asked, gingerly rubbing the bruise peeking out from the edge of his shirt. "I have some over-the-counter stuff, and Maria left some ointment around here." Jake disappeared into the bathroom cabinet, rummaging until he found a tube of cream. As Kevin settled in, Jake quietly scurried around the apartment. Every second, he worried he might have forgotten to hide some incriminating piece of clothing. He glanced around the bedroom and living room to ensure no stray leggings were in sight. Satisfied everything was tucked away in drawers or hamper, he returned to Kevin with an awkward smile. "Make yourself at home," Jake offered. "I don't have much in the fridge, but I can order takeout." Kevin nodded wearily. "Takeout would be awesome." Jake busied himself with the phone, ordering a few dishes he knew Kevin liked. As he waited for the delivery, he observed Kevin's condition. The older stuntman grimaced whenever he shifted. Jake tossed him an ice pack wrapped in a thin towel. That would be enough, he hoped, until they could get real medical follow-up. When the food arrived, Kevin ate slowly, grateful for the meal, but obviously in pain. The tension in the apartment was thick, at least for Jake. He kept forcing himself to stay in the living room instead of skulking around the bedroom, worried about the yoga pants and other items hidden in the hamper. After dinner, Kevin dropped off to sleep early. That left Jake to pace between his small kitchen and bedroom, nibbling on leftovers. He remembered how much comfort those clothes provided on a night like this. His muscles ached from the day's stunts, but he couldn't put on the leggings or t-shirt with Kevin around. It was too risky. If Kevin woke in the middle of the night to get water, or if Jake needed to help him, how would he explain the outfit? The possibility of mockery or, worse, revealing a side of himself he wasn't ready to discuss plagued him. Jake resolved to make do with an old pair of sweatpants. They felt coarse against his skin, but he ignored the discomfort, though it took him ages to fall asleep. The next morning, Kevin was still there, obviously. He coughed gently as Jake emerged from the bedroom. "Morning," Kevin mumbled. "Sorry about this, man. Feels weird crashing your place." Jake shrugged, forcing a casual tone. "It's no trouble. Seriously, stay as long as you need." They both had the day off while the crew rearranged schedules. Jake tried to keep Kevin company, but it was clear Kevin needed rest. By afternoon, Kevin was snoozing on the couch again. Jake quietly stepped into the bedroom, half thinking about rummaging for those clothes to see if he could at least stretch his arms in something softer. But the risk was too great. Kevin might wake up at any moment. Days stretched into nearly a full week. Kevin's bruises required more healing time than expected, so the set's medic team recommended limited motion. He remained at Jake's place, sleeping on the couch at night and hobbling around by day. Jake did his best to accommodate him, offering rides to the occasional checkup and making sure the fridge was stocked. But the entire time, Jake felt like he was living a double life, forced to hide the quiet ritual that had been a source of relief for him. Late one evening, after Kevin had gone to bed, Jake left the apartment under the pretense of running a quick errand. He actually drove around the block a few times, letting tension drain from his shoulders. The hamper in his bedroom contained the same leggings and shirts he'd grown attached to, but it was impossible to put them on with Kevin so close by. Jake found himself missing them with an intensity that surprised him. The routine of physical relief had become a lifeline in an otherwise punishing job. Finally, a day came when Kevin, looking stronger, announced that he would be heading back to his own place. "I can't say thanks enough," Kevin told Jake, gathering up his small duffel bag. "I owe you one." Jake exhaled the breath he felt he'd been holding for an entire week. "No worries. Glad you're feeling better." They bumped fists before Kevin left, and with that, Jake closed the door behind him. Silence enveloped the apartment. For a full minute, Jake didn't move. He just stood, processing that he was alone again. He let out a humorless laugh, aware of how relieved he felt. Immediately, his thoughts turned to the hamper in the bedroom. He walked over, pulled open the lid, and reached for the soft leggings. A swirl of conflicting emotions surged: relief, apprehension, but most of all, an overwhelming desire to just let his body relax. He changed into them, accompanied by the bamboo t-shirt, and stood in front of his mirror once again, gently running his hands over the delicate fabric. The tension of the past week seemed to melt away in that moment. Over the next few days, Jake slipped back into his secret routine. Whenever Maria was out, or he had the apartment to himself, he'd change into those comforting clothes. He started even purchasing a few items of his own in stealth mode: a pair of leggings under the guise of them being for exercise, and 2 more bamboo t-shirts that he claimed were for nighttime comfort, if anyone asked. He never wore them in front of Maria, though. Part of him feared that she would be amused or concerned, or perhaps question what it meant. The stunts continued to escalate, culminating in the big scene that had been circled on his calendar. The day arrived with early morning calls, a swarm of production assistants, and camera crews bustling around the set. Jake was at the center of it, set to perform a heart-pounding sequence involving a precarious fall from a tall prop structure onto a series of strategically placed mats below. Before the cameras rolled, Maria found him in the corner, performing his stretches. "You look nervous," she said, giving him a smile that didn't quite hide her own anxiety. He took a deep breath. "Yeah, I guess. This one's big." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just promise me you'll be careful. We already had one person get hurt recently." Jake gave her a nod. "I promise." The stunt was a controlled fall, but the controlled part only reduced some risk. In the actual moment, Jake felt his heart hammering in his chest as the director shouted, "Action!" He launched himself off the prop, twisting his torso mid-air. Everything rushed by in a blur. The landing came hard. Even though the mats broke his fall, an undeniable jolt ran up his spine, and his shoulder collided with the edge of another pad. Pain flared brightly in his arm, but he had completed the sequence on cue. When the director yelled, "Cut!" the set erupted in applause. Jake lay there, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He couldn't help but grin through the pain. A few crew members hurried over, and Maria was one of the first by his side. "Are you okay?" she demanded, worry evident in her eyes. He blinked, catching his breath. "I think so. My shoulder took a pretty solid knock, though." They got him sitting upright, and Maria carefully moved his arm to check the range of motion. When he winced, she shook her head. "You need an X-ray," she insisted. "At least let us rule out anything major." Jake relented, and that was how the next few hours passed, in a nearby medical facility, with Maria waiting anxiously while a doctor examined him. Fortunately, there were no breaks, just a deep bruise on his upper arm and shoulder. The relief in Maria's face was palpable, though she still looked at him like she wished he'd take a desk job. After leaving the hospital, Jake caught a ride home from her. By the time they reached his apartment building, the sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and pink streaks. Maria parked and turned off the engine. "I want to make sure you're okay tonight," she said firmly. "I'll stay over." Jake's heart pounded with a renewed sense of worry. He didn't mind her staying the night. In fact, he loved her presence. But what about the yoga pants and t-shirts he'd been squirreling away? If she started looking around or doing laundry to help him, since she often insisted on taking care of him, what would he say if she discovered them? They entered the apartment together. Immediately, Jake thought of all the places he had stashed his newly purchased items. He guided her to the couch, then rushed to the kitchen, hoping it wouldn't look suspicious. Maria watched him with a curious gaze. "You don't have to fuss over me," she said, removing her jacket and setting it aside. "I'm here to fuss over you, remember?" He let out a tense laugh. "Right, sorry." They ordered takeout, ate in relative peace, though Jake couldn't fully relax. After dinner, Maria went to shower. That left Jake in a quiet panic. He hurried to the bedroom, discreetly gathering any leggings or bamboo shirts that might be lying in plain view. He balled them up and stuffed them into a duffel bag he kept on the top shelf of the closet. Then he double-checked the hamper, relieved to see it was empty of anything that might draw suspicion. When Maria emerged from the shower, her hair damp and her eyes tired, Jake offered her a t-shirt from his drawer to sleep in. She accepted, then sank onto his bed. He flicked off the lights. They lay side by side in the darkness, and it seemed that every muscle in Jake's body ached anew. Maria placed her arm gently over his chest, careful of his shoulder. He closed his eyes, letting her warmth soothe him. Yet deep down, an uneasy feeling gnawed at him. He told himself he had to talk to her eventually. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. Morning arrived, and Maria awakened first. Jake found her in the kitchen, rummaging through cupboards in an effort to make a simple breakfast. "You should stay in bed," she chided lightly when she saw him shuffle in. "I'd bring it to you, but, well, this kitchen isn't exactly big enough for breakfast in bed." He offered a tired grin and joined her, leaning against the counter. The bruise on his shoulder flared if he moved the wrong way, but he tried not to show how painful it was. As she cracked eggs into a small bowl, her gaze drifted to a corner of the counter where a half-folded piece of pink fabric peeked out from behind a canister of protein powder. Jake's stomach lurched. He realized he had hastily stuffed one of his new t-shirts there in a panic last night. "What's that?" Maria asked, curious. Jake's heart thudded. He scrambled for an explanation. "Oh, that? Probably something you left behind last time?" He reached over quickly and snatched it, stuffing it into a drawer. His attempt to look casual felt clumsy. Maria narrowed her eyes, but then let it go. "Maybe. It didn't look like my usual stuff, though." She shrugged. "Anyway, can you hand me the salt?" Jake complied, handing her the salt shaker with a trembling hand. She resumed cooking. Tension thrummed in his veins, and for the next few minutes he hovered in awkward silence, certain that her gaze would flick back to that drawer at any moment. But she didn't press further. Soon enough, they sat at the kitchen table, picking at scrambled eggs and toast. Later that day, Maria left for work, gently warning him to rest his arm and shoulder. Once she was gone, Jake opened the drawer to retrieve the pink shirt, staring at it as if it were some forbidden treasure. The wave of relief he felt at not being found out battled with an even stronger sense that he wasn't being honest with her. It was a week later when everything came to a head. Maria stopped by unannounced one evening after her shift. Jake had just finished a hot shower and, in the privacy of his apartment, had been wearing a pair of soft leggings and a bamboo tank top he'd purchased. He was in the bedroom, rummaging for a sweatshirt to throw over it, when he heard her knock at the door. Jake froze. His heart hammered. She knocked again, and he knew he had only seconds before she'd try the doorknob or assume something was wrong. He yanked off the leggings and tank top, tossing them onto the bed, and grabbed the nearest pair of sweats. As he sprinted to the door, he realized he'd left the women's garments plainly visible on his rumpled bed. But he had no time to gather them up. Panicked, he opened the door a crack. Maria's concerned expression greeted him. "Jake, are you okay? You took so long to answer." He forced a smile. "Sorry, I was in the shower. Come in." She stepped inside. He noticed her scanning the area. Perhaps it was his own paranoia, but he felt her eyes linger on the path from the bathroom to the bedroom. He tried to steer her away. "Want something to drink?" he offered, heading to the kitchen so she'd follow. "Sure," she said, but her voice held an edge of curiosity. She was about to set her bag down on the couch when she glanced toward the partially open bedroom door. Her eyebrows furrowed. "What's that?" Jake swallowed hard, his mind racing. From where she stood, she could easily see the bright color of the bamboo tank top on his bed. Perhaps the leggings, too. There was no time to conceal it now. He made a split-second decision. "Hey, let me explain," he stammered, raising his hands as if to disarm her. "Just give me a second." Maria stepped closer to the bedroom. Her expression was a mix of confusion and concern. "Jake?" He followed her to the doorway, and they both looked at the clothes on the bed. There was no immediate sign of condemnation on her face, just bewilderment. She reached out, picking up the tank top by a shoulder strap, letting the fabric dangle between them. Jake felt heat flood his cheeks. I know this is going to sound strange." Maria stared at him, then back at the tank top. "You've been wearing these?" she asked quietly, though her tone wasn't accusatory, just searching for an explanation. He let out a long breath. "Yeah, not for any reason beyond comfort. I didn't know how to tell you." She blinked, processing his words. She sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the tank top. Jake saw a dozen questions flicker across her face, but she finally spoke. "When did this start?" Carefully, Jake recounted the story, the soreness, the desperation, stumbling upon her yoga pants in the hamper, discovering that the soft, stretchy material soothed his bruises and aches in a way none of his clothes did. He explained how he'd begun buying his own items, and that it wasn't some hidden attempt at being somebody else, but rather a private way of nursing his body after punishing days on set. He tried to keep his voice steady, though shame and anxiety threatened to undo him. Maria listened without interrupting. When he finished, he braced himself for laughter or shock or maybe even anger. Instead, she stood and placed a hand on his uninjured shoulder, gazing at him with something like empathy. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked softly. He shrugged, swallowing the knot in his throat. "I guess I was scared of what you'd think, or that you'd see me differently. My job, it's all about being tough, and wearing clothes like these. I thought it would make me look weak or something." Maria shook her head. "You go out there every day and do things most people would never attempt. Wearing soft clothes to help your injuries heal doesn't diminish that. You're not hurting anyone." Jake felt a surge of relief he hadn't known was possible. He gave a shaky laugh. "I guess that's good to hear." Maria's lips curved into a small smile. "Honestly, I think it's brilliant if it helps you recover. Maybe you could expand your closet a little so you're not always raiding my pile." The gentle tease in her tone made him exhale the tension in his chest. He looked away for a moment, still unsure what to do with the flood of emotion swirling through him. "So, you're not upset?" She shook her head. "No, I'm not upset. I just wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me." He sank onto the edge of the bed beside her. "I was embarrassed. I didn't want to deal with jokes from the guys on set, or from you, if you thought it was weird." She slid her arm through his. "I won't judge you for trying to take care of yourself." She let out a light laugh, glancing at the garments in her hand. "Besides, I kind of want my clothes back." Jake managed a genuine grin. "I'll buy you new ones if you want." "I think we can share," she teased, and that made both of them laugh quietly. Relief, a deep sense of calm, settled over Jake's shoulders. They moved to the living room and spent the next hour talking it all out. The conversation was warm and frank, touching on their fears and the pressures of the stunt world, as well as the importance of taking care of a body that was constantly put in harm's way. Maria offered suggestions on gentle fabrics and brands she'd heard about from friends who practiced yoga or worked in physically demanding jobs. She even offered to help him pick out items that might fit him better. When Maria eventually left that night, Jake walked her to the door, hugging her gently so as not to strain his shoulder. "Thanks for understanding," he whispered. She rested her forehead against his for a moment. "Take care of yourself, okay? I'll see you on set tomorrow." After she was gone, Jake locked the door and stood in the quiet hallway, the city lights flickering outside the window. A sense of peace washed over him. It was the first time in weeks that he didn't feel like he was hiding an enormous secret. That night, he slipped into a fresh pair of leggings and a soft hoodie he had purchased. The fabric soothed his bruises, and though he still felt the aches of the day, a new tranquility lulled him to rest. From that point on, Jake moved with more ease around his own apartment. He no longer feared that Maria would suddenly arrive to surprise him. He continued his routine of wearing the comfortable clothes in private, letting his body recover after grueling stunts. On the set, he performed with renewed confidence, noticing that his healing time felt shorter whenever he let himself rest properly. Daniel and Kevin occasionally asked Jake about his recovery methods. Jake kept things vague. He wasn't ready to explain the exact nature of his regimen. He told them he was experimenting with new forms of therapy, like better stretching routines and supportive gear. They teased him good-naturedly, but respected his privacy. Kevin, who had gotten a glimpse of Jake's hospitality when he stayed at the apartment, remarked that he was grateful for how caring Jake had been. Jake just smiled and shrugged it off, knowing the real tension had been about something else entirely. Maria continued to encourage him. Sometimes, on her nights off, she would bring over new types of lotions or heat packs to help his muscles relax further. Although they never made a big show of discussing the clothing again, the closeness they shared grew stronger. If she noticed any new items in Jake's drawers that were designed for women, she didn't tease him about it. Instead, she simply acknowledged that it was part of his personal routine to maintain his health and sanity. Their relationship deepened. The trust between them felt hard-won, especially after weeks of Jake thinking he needed to conceal so much. Maria's acceptance of his habit, her understanding of why it mattered, made him feel safer with her. They still worried about each other on set, but it was more bearable knowing that at the end of the day, they had each other's support. One evening, after a particularly long day of filming, Maria joined Jake at his place again. He wore a plain t-shirt and athletic shorts, still a bit sweaty from the final takes. Without hesitation, he stepped into the bedroom, emerged with a pair of comfortable yoga pants, and laid them out on the coffee table. "I'm going to put these on," he announced in a light tone, "if you don't mind." She raised an amused eyebrow. "Be my guest." He disappeared into the bathroom to quickly rinse off. When he returned, wearing the yoga pants, Maria only smiled at him. He settled next to her on the couch, letting his head fall against the back cushion. "We're off tomorrow," he said with a contented sigh. Finally, a day of rest. She nodded, adjusting the pillow behind her back. "And you can wear whatever you want," she said, her tone playful yet kind. Jake laughed, feeling at ease. The day's bruises still hurt, but in that moment, the quiet comfort of his apartment and Maria's warm, unwavering presence felt like more than enough. In the following weeks, life proceeded with its usual rhythm of early calls and late-night wrap-ups. Jake's stunts remained top-notch, and as production neared its end, there was talk of new projects and bigger opportunities for him. He often found himself daydreaming about how far he could go in this career, even as he stayed mindful that every stunt was a new gamble with his body. But he had a secret weapon now, those moments of comfort away from the scrutiny of fellow stunt performers and the film crowd. He no longer felt guilty about it. Some nights Maria stayed over and saw him casually slip into the athleisure clothes. She'd give him a half smile, sometimes rolling her eyes in a teasing manner, but never once belittling him. On nights she didn't stay, he'd wear them more freely, grateful for the healing effect they had on his sore muscles. He learned to manage the tension at work differently. He still bantered with Daniel and Kevin, still maintained the outward persona of a tough stuntman, but he no longer felt as if that persona was everything. The softness of the clothes at home reminded him there was more to him than just the tough exterior. He didn't have to broadcast it, but he didn't have to bury it in secrecy either. Eventually, filming for the movie wrapped. The entire cast and crew gathered for a wrap party at a local restaurant. Jake attended in a casual shirt and jeans, looking every bit the rugged stuntman who had taken his share of bumps and bruises. Maria accompanied him. They laughed with the other performers, regaling them with stories of near misses and on-set bloopers. Kevin, fully recovered by then, clapped Jake on the back and thanked him again for letting him crash on his couch. Daniel teased Jake about being a saint, but also noted how well Jake had handled the final stunts. The camaraderie among them felt genuine and celebratory. When the party wound down, Jake and Maria slipped away, exiting to the quiet street outside. They stood beneath the glow of a street lamp, the hum of distant traffic in the background. "Any plans after this project?" Maria asked, tilting her head to look at him. He shrugged thoughtfully. "There are a few leads, some new action films, a couple of smaller projects. I'm still mulling them over." Maria tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I want you to keep doing what you love, but I also want you to stay safe." Jake smiled softly. "I know. It's a balance, right?" They started walking, the night air cool against their faces. He slipped an arm around her. She leaned into him, content, and they strolled back toward the car. Neither of them mentioned the hidden routine or the clothes waiting in Jake's apartment. It simply was what it was, a part of him, part of the life they shared, no longer a secret overshadowing his every thought. Much later that night, when they were back at his place, Jake retrieved a hoodie from the closet, one he had bought from the same brand that made Maria's bamboo t-shirt. He found her in the living room, reviewing a few medical notes on her phone. He quietly draped the hoodie across her lap. "What's this?" she asked, setting her phone aside. "You said you wanted me to replace at least one thing," he joked. She rubbed her hand over the soft fabric. "Wow, I might keep this," he chuckled. "We can share." She held his gaze, giving him a knowing smile. "That's the idea." He sat next to her, the evening quiet settling around them. Their conversation drifted to more routine subjects, what tomorrow might hold, the errands they needed to run, the next film or the next gig that might appear. But an unspoken understanding filled the space between them. They had discovered a certain calm amid the chaos of their jobs, and it involved letting go of preconceived notions about what they should be wearing or how they should be acting, just to live up to an image. Jake sank into the cushions, already feeling the faint sting of bruises in his muscles. When he closed his eyes, a sense of gratitude welled up. He pictured the yoga pants in his dresser and how he'd slip into them later, feeling the same gentle relief he'd experienced that first night. This time, there'd be no fear that someone would mock him or misunderstand him. Maria's acceptance had lifted that burden. She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. "You ready for some rest?" she asked quietly. He smiled, nodding. "Yeah, I am." They stood, switched off the living room lamp, and headed toward the bedroom. Outside, the city lights shimmered, and in the distance, the hum of traffic continued. But within the quiet walls of the apartment, Jake felt a sense of calm he hadn't known in a long while. He knew tomorrow would bring more stunts, more bruises, and new challenges. Yet he faced them with confidence and a secret softness he cherished, one that gently eased the harsh realities of his chosen path. He might not shout it from the rooftops on set, but in the privacy of his own home, he could continue wearing clothes that soothed his aching body. And he could do so without shame, because the person who mattered most to him understood and accepted it. That knowledge, more than anything, allowed him to breathe deeply, letting go of tensions that had once threatened to consume him. Tomorrow, the cycle would start again. Jake would wake early, drive to the set, and train for another series of stunts. He would tough it out in front of the cameras, stunt coordinators, and fellow performers. But when the day ended, he'd come back to this space, slip into something softer, and give himself the gentle comfort no one else knew he craved. And Maria would be there, quietly supportive, reminding him that no matter how rugged his profession might be, there was always a place for softness to heal the bruises inside and out. And that was a reality he could live with, day in and day out, one stunt at a time.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.